I'm so happy to have you and our wonderful panelists here to talk about some really awesome books. So get ready to add some books to your to be read list. This is Sarah Richmond, Director of Communications and Education here at Edelweiss by Above the Tree Line. Today we have a number of our publisher friends and some authors that are going to share their top picks for books by debut authors, rising voices that in some way promote diverse perspectives. Maybe they make us look at the world around us through a different lens, maybe challenge our status quo thinking in some way, or just highlight the beauty and diversity. So know that we are recording. Afterwards, we're going to send you a link to this entire collection so you can check them out in Edelweiss. Everyone but our speakers today are muted, but feel free if you have any questions, put them in Q&A. Allison, my colleague, is going to keep an eye on those. If you need to reach out to any of our publishers, you can certainly find their contact info on their publisher page in Edelweiss, or you can check out their website as well. I want to mention that today's session is really special to us here at Edelweiss and Above the Tree Line because it both benefits and it's driven by the work of Treeline 2020, which reflects our commitment to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in our publishing industry. It's embedded in who we are as a company and all that we do, our mindset, our solutions and services, our team. So thank you for supporting this effort with your participation today. And really it all comes down to the power of books. Books are wonderful because they open our mind to different viewpoints and experiences. They help us, consider new ideas and walk in someone else's shoes, and they help broaden our experiences and help us build empathy for people who are different than us. So I'm going to stop talking and get to the books. Whether you are a bookseller or a librarian that's considering books for your shelves to share with your readers, or whether you're a reviewer looking to raise awareness about a cool book or an important topic, or maybe you're just an avid reader like myself, just looking for your next great read, these are all for you. So our publishers have picked these books for you today with the theme in mind, and these are definitely some authors to watch out for. So we're going to hear from a number of publishers today, a few authors as well. Each publisher has just 5 minutes to talk about 1 or 2 titles they're excited about. So we're going to be moving quickly. It's kind of like speed dating for books, but it'll keep it moving and it'll keep it really interesting. So we're going to start with some children's and young adult titles. I already have tagged these. I was mentioning to folks, our speakers before we joined today, I tagged them to read to my own children. Okay, so first up, we have a couple of great titles that were nominated by West Margin Press, and the author, Angela Chante, is here herself to share them with us. And we're going to start with The Noisy Classroom. Angela?
Hi. Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm first up to bat. I'm so excited. I'm happy to be representing West Margin Press with my 2 titles, The Noisy Classroom and When My Cousins Come to Town. I'm Angela Chante Johnson. I go by the pen Angela Chante. I'm a teacher and now a new author. So this is super exciting. The Noisy Classroom is about my classroom, my time in the classroom. It follows a young girl as she's starting 3rd grade with this non-traditional teacher, Miss Johnson, who's me. And all of the non-traditional things that she does in the classroom are a little odd. The girl is planning to run away to Antarctica because she can't fathom being in Miss Johnson's classroom. And when she gets in the class, she actually realizes, this is kind of cool. And so we follow her journey throughout the summer into September when school starts again. And at the end of the book, she realizes that running away to Antarctica isn't as cool as her noisy classroom. And so I'm super excited to bring The Noisy Classroom and potentially a series of The Noisy Classroom books to the market. My second book is When My Cousins Come to Town. Thank you for the slide. And this is my absolute love. It comes out in May. It's about cousin culture in the Black community. I am African American, and so in our culture, we are big on family events. We are big on cousins. They come to us as our first friends, which my mom says. And so we follow the little girl in the book as her cousins come to visit her in the summer, and everyone has a cool nickname. They're Swift, Spice, DJE. All of these cousins were super cool nicknames, and she's the only cousin that does not have a nickname. And so throughout the summer, she adopts her cousin's characteristics, and she tries on her cousin's perspectives, her cousin's traits to try to earn her own nickname, but eventually finds out that being yourself and being true to who you are is the only way to get a nickname at the end of the story. So super excited for this title. This comes out May. The Noisy Classroom came out last May. And yeah, that's me. Thank you guys
awesome.
for having me.
Yeah, I know it's hard to talk about your own book because you're so humble, but these are great. You guys, the illustrations in these books are just truly wonderful. There's a lot of examples of them in Edelweiss, so you can get a real good feel for them. So if you are a buyer at a bookseller or a library, you can check those out. They're just so beautiful.
I'd like to add just really quickly. Yeah, thank you. That the Noisy Classroom was actually nominated for a few awards. So we won the American Fiction Award title. We just were a finalist for the Forward Indie Books and the Wishing Shelf. So that's super exciting. So we won one, and we are finalists in 2 other books for my debut book, which is amazing.
Well, hats off to all the teachers this past year for sure. So
for sure. For sure.
Well, awesome. Thanks, Angela. Next up, we have a unique collection of books that was nominated by Nancy's Feel Good Fables, which is distributed by Pathway Books if you're looking for them in Edelweiss. And we have Sarah Gons on to talk about them. So Sarah, we're going to pass it to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. Tina Searches for Her Dream is the first release in the Nancy's Feel Good Fables collection, which are 12 stories for children ages 3 to 7 that are rolling out over the next 3 years that take children on a journey toward empathy, self-love, and confidence, written by my mom and executive and parenting coach, Nancy J. Gans. Each book in the collection touches on a key element of social emotional learning. Tina Searches for Her Dream, which you can see on the screen, is a story about resilience, learning to get up and try again when you fail, and sometimes to pivot to a new direction that is more aligned with your strengths. Tina, which launched on March 3rd, was a #1 new release in 9 categories on Amazon, including children's multicultural literature and children's inspirational books. Tina is a story about finding your unique talents and gifts. But there's a twist to the story because unlike many that I grew up with in my generation where everyone gets a blue ribbon, Tina realizes she's not good at a lot of things. Her mom is a ballerina, so she's sure she's going to be a great ballerina, and she tries, and it's just not her thing. So she realizes in the middle of the book that it's not her passion, and she goes on this journey of trying all these different sports until she finds horseback riding. She works incredibly hard, practices, and gives it her all until she becomes a champion. There are so many beautiful messages in this story that resonate not just with children, but with adults. And that's the beautiful part of this book and all in the collection. There's really a message for children and adults. And each time you read it, you can glean a new message. And some of the key takeaways of this book are to go for it in life without letting fear, doubt, disappointment, or judgment to stop you. Tina never judges herself for being less good than the other kids. She gives it her all, she works hard, she never gives up, and her friends support her throughout the way. There's also the message that everyone is on their own path, learns at a unique pace, and each person's journey looks different. So there's no need to compare yourself to others, just run your own race. And for parents, there's the underlying message that your children may deviate from your expectations and hopes, and to release that judgment or unfair pressure. There's also a great message for, all kids and adults, but it's the idea of opportunity cost, that no matter how much time you've spent in a given field or activity, if it's not your purpose or passion, it's okay to pivot. And the idea that when we lean into our strengths instead of focusing on a weakness, we find ourselves thriving in our zone of genius. Another special part of this book is the diversity. My background is in the multi-ethnic strategy space at a Fortune 500, making products more culturally sensitive. And this is the first book sold on Amazon where you can actually choose your lead character from a variety of Tinas. In a study of teachers, 90% responded that children would be more engaged readers if they saw themselves represented in the books that they read. And 58% of parents surveyed in a scholastic study said having diverse characters is something they really look for in finding children's books. So what's special about this book is not only does it represent such a diverse group of characters from multicultural, multi-ethnic, different religious backgrounds, but it has a lot of very unique, nuanced details that today dancers of color still have to dye their own point shoes because they're only made in one shade. So something we did that's a very small detail, and one of many small details, is made sure that the skin tone of the shoes matches the skin tone of the actual dancers in the very diverse classroom. So our hope is that more children can see themselves not just represented, but championed in a leading role. And the response to this has been so deeply moving, from children who are saying, Tina looks just like me, to adults and teachers of color who have cried holding this book, sharing that to this day, they've still not held a book that reflected them in their childhood. And there's still this deep wound around representation in children's literature. So we hope that with our first book, we are a small part of that new direction and paving the way toward greater inclusion. Our mission as a brand is to donate 1 million books to children in need. And with the help of corporate and individual sponsors, we're seeding each book from the collection to children in hospitals, Title I schools, refugees after-school programs. And we're partnering with local literacy programs to help foster greater reading adoption in young children and discussion surrounding emotional development young. Books are such a powerful tool for learning, as Sarah said in the intro, and each book in the collection touches on a very deep theme, but in a child-friendly and fun way, to arm children with the necessary tools to get through complex emotions and experiences. Our next books in the collection touch on topics like grief, isolation, bullying, environmental sustainability. So in totality, it builds a library of emotional intelligence. And what's so special about my mom as an author is that each book, whether it's for adults or children, it's designed to infuse the reader with confidence, self-love, and to leave feeling like they have greater tools for success and belief in self. And the early responses to Tina's Searches for Her Dream have been so overwhelmingly positive. Teachers are very excited to develop empathy building curriculum around Tina. We have doctors and therapists in the early childhood development space who vetted our book as being a great learning tool to foster discussion with families. And parents have shared that Tina is the book their kids are asking for over and over and over. It's the read it again and again and again book from the kids. So this is just a very inspirational and empowering book that teaches children to never give up in pursuit of your dreams. And we're just so thrilled to share the first book in the Nancy's Feel Good Fables collection with you today.
That's so fun. Man, I could have used a book like that as a kid. I think maybe we all could have. Such a cool idea to have different versions. So thanks for sharing with us, Sarah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, next up we have some YA titles for you young adult lovers. These are nominated by Tor Teen. Issa Cabans from Tor is going to talk to us about Flash Fire and A Chorus Rises. And you probably haven't seen it yet in Edelweiss, but you will when you click through the collection. I love the banner above Flash Fire, Issa, and it says, sometimes life's a slow burn and sometimes it's a dumpster fire, which I think I now need to be made into a t-shirt or a coffee mug or something. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Issa.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I agree. When I first heard the tagline too, it was just so relatable and I loved it, and super funny, and tonally just like I feel encapsulates, you know, the world of TJ Klune's The Extraordinary series. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Issa Gaban, pronouns she, her. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager for Tor Teen, and I am really happy to be joining you here today to talk about 2 rising stars on our list. There are also marginalized voices our team is committed to amplifying in the YA community with your help. And first up, we have Flash Fire. This is the explosive sequel to USA Today and New York Times bestselling author TJ Klune's YA debut, The Extraordinaries. This series tells the queer coming-of-age story of a fanboy with ADHD named Nick Bell and the heroes he loves. This series, it's perfect for fans of queer romances, fan fiction, and superheroes, especially if you are someone who has been beating the drum for more LGBTQ representation in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In this next installment in the series, new superheroes are arriving in the fictional metropolis of Nova City, and readers are reunited with lovable fanfic writer Nick Bell and his friends, who must figure out who is virtuous and who is villainous. Similar to the protagonist of the series, our author, TJ Klune, pronouns he, him, is queer and is also neurodiverse and lives with ADHD. TJ has been very open about his mental health journey and his mission to bring more accurate and positive mental health and LGBTQ representation in his works, and especially in his YA novels. And if you're interested in learning more about TJ's personal journey, I highly recommend you check out his guest post. It's currently live on Mary Sue, titled "A Billion Thoughts at Once." It's incredibly moving, honest, and heartfelt. And I really urge you to check out this fantasy series. It's so fun, charming. It's basically a hug for your heart. And it's definitely one of those reads where after you read it, you should then share it with someone you love. Featuring a vibrant and diverse cast of lovable characters that will spark joy and genuinely make you laugh. Don't miss Flashfire, coming July 20th, as well as the paperback edition of The Extraordinaries out that day as well. Flashfire is currently available for request on Edelweiss, and our team has uploaded a ton of great selling tools and design assets to promote this series. Please be sure to visit our Edelweiss page to see those assets. You can also learn more about our ongoing pre-order campaign that we have for Flashfire. And you can also get a very special look at the reversible jacket that will be featured in the first printing of the exclusive hardcover editions of Flashfire as well. And then next up, we have A Chorus Rises. YA sensation Bethany C. Morrow, pronoun she, her, returns to the magical universe of Ensemble of Water in this highly anticipated follow-up to her captivating debut fantasy. Last summer, Ensemble of Water became an instant national bestseller, receiving countless praise from notable YA authors, including Jason Reynolds, who calls the novel beautiful and brilliant. Set in Portland, Oregon, Ensemble of Water is a contemporary fantasy that follows two young Black girls named Tavia and Effie as they come to terms with the power that lies behind their secret magical identities. Through the unbreakable bond of their sisterhood, these two best friends come to understand their unique abilities while fighting against everyday systemic racism and sexism. Now with A Chorus Rises, Morrow brings us an all-new tale set in the same universe that centers on a loco teen influencer, Naima Bradshaw, as she navigates her new life as a social pariah within her community, following a confrontation involving Tavia and Effie, who readers are introduced to in book one. Naima has been accused of outing Tavia as a siren, and the news has spread worldwide, casting Naima as the ultimate villain. No one wants to hear Naima's truth of what really happened, not her local community, her friends, or the media, but Naima is not one to go quietly. Readers will get to know the real Naima, witnessing the fall and rise of a young Black girl whose spirit cannot be broken and whose magical voice will not be silenced. Bethany is a Black woman writing unapologetically Black stories in a predominantly white science fiction and fantasy space. Both Ensemble of Water and A Chorus Rises dive into timely issues of white supremacy, racial inequality, gender inequality, and issues with media and its portrayal of Black women. But these tales also celebrate Black girl magic and sisterhood and female empowerment. They teach us the importance of hearing and believing and uplifting Black women. A Chorus Rises is currently available for request on Edelweiss. Similar to Flashfire, we have a lot of great selling and promotional assets for this title. We will be launching a pre-order campaign for A Chorus Rises shortly that will be inclusive of all formats. So please follow Tortine on social to learn more about that offer if you're interested. A Chorus Rises in the paperback edition of Ensemble of War will release this summer on June 1st. And that's a wrap for me. I hope you check out the titles I've presented today, and thank you all so much for your time.
Lisa, you mentioned it, but definitely check out the illustrations and the artwork that's in Edelweiss for A Chorus Rises. There's lots of images that I'm sure stores will be really happy to see about promoting it. Could be used promoting it on social, which is genius. I love it. Okay, so we're going to shift gears just a tiny bit now, or maybe a lot. We're going to talk about some fiction and graphic novel titles. So first up, we have Julia Pomeranda from Drawing Quarterly, who's going to tell us about a really cool title called Cyclopedia Exotica.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Julia Polmiranda, pronouns she, her, and I am the marketing director at Drawn and Quarterly. If you are familiar with us, amazing. If you are not familiar with us, we are a graphic novel publisher. We primarily publish graphic novels for adults. We are one of the world's premier graphic novel publishers. We are probably, you probably know our authors Linda Berry and Adrian Tamina, whose book came out last year. But today I'm going to talk to you about someone else, an author very dear to my heart, Mindra Dhaliwal, and her new book, Cyclopedia Exotica, which has this really beautiful edge finish that we're really excited about. This is our second book with Aminder. Our first book with her was called Woman World. Both of her books are science fiction comedies that explore ideas about patriarchy, race, gender, sexuality, and she came to us as a cold submission, which is really exciting. She originally serialized both of these books on Instagram, where she has 260,000 followers. And it's really amazing to see the way that the stories change as they go from Instagram to a book. She really does change and add and grow the story and make it work differently in the different formats. Aminder started making comics because she is an animator and she was pitching ideas in animation. And as you know, there are a lot of gatekeepers in animation, and she just felt like all of her ideas kept getting watered down. And so she started, after going to the Women's March, she started a comic about a world where all the male identified people had disappeared. And it just blew up on Instagram. And she realized that she didn't need to water down her voice for public consumption, that the gatekeepers in media had created this world where her ideas, she didn't feel confident in her ideas anymore. But once she started just distributing it publicly, she saw that there was this huge audience really keen on hearing this inclusive vision of a world where women learn to speak without mansplaining. So that was her first book, Woman World, which we published in September 2018, and which wound up on 25 Best of the Year lists, including those from the New York Public Library, Bustle, The Cut, The Hollywood Reporter, Library Journal, Wired, and pretty much as soon as she wound down work on Woman World, she started Cyclopedia Exotica. Cyclopedia Exotica explores a world where there are people who are born with one eye and people who are born with two eyes. And she uses that to explore these ideas of difference. So this is a book that will really resonate with anyone who's ever felt like an outsider for being something other than straight, cis, white, able-bodied, anyone who's felt different or who's experienced microaggressions. The book is dedicated to anyone who's ever felt not seen. And we have gotten a tremendous amount of praise for this in advance of publication. It comes out in May. This fantastic review of the book ran on Publishers Weekly by Carmen Maria Machado, author of In the Dream House. And we also received blurbs from Maya Kobabe, who wrote the graphic novel Genderqueer. And she just has this amazing sense of humor, and really she does speak directly to these experiences that accrue over a lifetime of feeling marginalized by the mainstream white cis gaze. And I just feel like this is a book that really celebrates people who have felt marginalized, exoticized, and othered for their perceived differences. And I really love many of the jokes. I really was desperate to include a lot of the jokes because I feel like that's the best way to really get a great sense of Aminder's style. But I thought this one was a particularly relevant one. There's a lot about motherhood in this book. There's a lot about figuring out your boundaries and finding out how to be in the world. Yeah. And I just wanted to maybe quote this Maya Kobe blurb in full, where she says, where they say, the lives of 10 characters in the same city intertwine as each grapples with living in an otherized body. Their physical differences are fetishized, marketed to, discriminated against, and misunderstood, as bodies are in our own world. What to do when people see your single eye but not yourself? Rage about it, laugh about it, make art about it, and work to change the world for the better. Aminder Dhaliwal is such a deft and clever storyteller. This book made me giggle and made me think, and it fueled my own determination to keep pushing for real social change. I'm very excited for people to get to check this out. We have a review copy available on Edelweiss, and you can always reach out directly to me via publicity@drawnandquarterly.com. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Julia. And you may have mentioned a little bit, but there are more jokes, more illustrations as samples on the Edelweiss listing, so you can go and check those out as well. Awesome. Okay, next up, we have a title nominated by Lanternfish Press, which is distributed by Pathway Books if you're looking for them in Edelweiss. And Christine Newlieb is going to talk to us about the salt fields. Christine, you may have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, a year
Oh,
of
you're
soon,
good.
I would think that I would remember to do that by this point. I'm the editorial director at Lanternfish Press. My name is Christine Newlieb, and I'm here to introduce The Salt Fields by Stacey D. Flood, which came out on March 9th. This is a novella-length work of fiction set in the 1940s during the Great Migration, when so many African Americans left the Jim Crow South in search of opportunities in northern cities. One of those periods of American history where I feel like the Great Migration should have been one of those touchstones that was part of everyone's historical education. But like, as a little white girl growing up in the Midwest, like I didn't know about this until much later on, this like great movement of history. So it follows the journey of 4 characters who all for different reasons are trying to escape a past that's really burdened with memories, for something that's uncertain that they hope will be something better. They're not sure. They talk along this journey on the train, and their stories start to come out. Stacey, this is his debut novel, but he has a background in playwriting, so the dialogue is written with like a very fine ear for just like bringing out all of the different aspects of these characters through their conversation, because it's a novella where conversation is most of what happens. Just these characters. The train is segregated, so they're on a car with other Black passengers, and in that world, kind of without white people, they're able to express who they are and what they want and what they're searching for. I just want to give you a taste of Stacey's actual voice, because he's a very lyrical writer, and there's a point like kind of in the middle of the novella where the train stops, and it's going to be stopped for a couple hours, and it's near one of the characters, Davinion's hometown, and he's like, come on, like we should go have dinner with my family, we're here. He convinces the narrator to go with him. So the two of them leave the train and they walk through the countryside. And the description is that above the tops of the trees, the sky was albumin, almost cellophane, which darkened the leaves against it to black. Although the sky was crisp, there was still moisture in the air. We heard bits of a voice yelling from a distance, and Davinion laughed. I started to ask, how much farther? Ain't no rain, he yelled back at the voice. Took us no time at all. There was more yelling over the rustle of leaves and insects, and Davinion's pace quickened. He was home. After a few more steps, the road opened to an enormous meadow with a large colonial home, freshly painted and thick orchards behind it, the trees perfectly aligned. This vision made me stop short, enraptured. It was so far from the hardscrabble world I'd envisioned as Davinion's past and assumed to be all of ours. The front lawn was perfectly emerald and manicured, tiny beige grasshoppers leaping from blade to blade as we approached. As we moved closer, the house expanded in my vision, its alchemy only broken by the sounds of a few gray squirrels in the nearby oak trees. And that house, that Davinion's family home, becomes this beautiful set piece that's full of like all the possible qualities of light. This book reads like some of the best of Southern Gothic writing. And it also throws into relief the sort of surrounding environment of menace that Black Americans were facing in the 1940s in the rural South. Because this beautiful, peaceful house, beautiful, peaceful Southern house is surrounded by the anger and the envy of white rural Southerners who resent that this is a thing Black people can now have in their town. So it's a beautiful story of a conversation and a couple of casual stops on a train journey that change a life.
That's awesome. I think this sounds like the perfect book to hunker down with on a rainy spring day, which we have a lot of those coming up in Michigan. So I'll keep that one in mind for sure. Thanks for sharing that one. Next up, we have a book nominated by Hachette Book Group, and Seema Mahanian is going to talk to us about 7 Days in June.
Hi, I'm Seema Mahanian. I'm the senior editor at Grand Central Publishing, working on fiction. And this is 7 Days in June. So I'm sure we've all had that fantasy of running into a long lost love, and we obviously look effortlessly amazing, and the chemistry is still there, and the conversation is really bantery. And of course, you get the last word in with a devastating remark. In reality, that's never actually how it plays out, at least for me. But I got to really live in this delusion when I read Tia Williams's 7 Days in June. It's a novel about a second chance at love where everyone is very smart, they're hot, and they're talented. So basically the dream. In Tia Williams's witty, big-hearted romantic novel, we have erotica author Eva Mercy, who meets Shane Hall, a reclusive, lauded literary star, at a book event, and sparks fly. Then you learn that these two were madly in love 15 years ago. And now for 7 Days in June, they come back together trying to bury their past hurts and traumas. So like what the Terry McMillan novel did for the 90s, Tia Williams is doing for a new generation of readers today. And Tia Williams has a real voice, and I'm saying voice with a capital V, because in one sentence, she seamlessly moves between witty dialogue to a throwback Diana Ross reference, to a pointed, acute observation of being a Black artist in contemporary America, and all without skipping a beat. Rumaan Alam, the New York Times bestselling novelist of Leave the World Behind, called Tia a canny anthropologist of contemporary life. And alongside Eva and Shane's romance, there's a different kind of love story. And that's the one between mothers and daughters. You join Eva on the roller coaster that comes with parenting a precocious tween, which is vacillating between adoring best friend and hurler of tantrums. Tia Williams also writes about the consequences of motherlessness, overcoming generational traumas, and ultimately understanding the power of vulnerability. So I'm going to quote #1 bestselling author Jodi Picoult, who said, "I get asked to endorse a lot of novels, but very few have me laughing out loud and crying with the characters as their hearts are broken and healed. I absolutely love 7 Days in June." You're also going to be hearing a lot about Tia Williams in the coming months because she's an absolute star and we have a really exciting campaign planned. She's already received a starred Kirkus review, been on numerous most anticipated lists, and her previous novel, The Perfect Find, is being turned into a Netflix movie produced and starring Gabrielle Union. But this novel, 7 Days in June, it's full of fun and depth and truth. This romantic fantasy is also a reminder that there is more to the Black experience than pain. This is a story of Black life that's filled with joy and sex and friendship and success. And I really hope you fall hard in love with this read. And feel free to join the many others who have been emailing me their fantasy movie cast. And if someone here can get out the word to Reggie John Page from Bridgerton, hook a girl up because he is currently our #1 vote for Shane. And that is 7 days, and this is a beautiful cover.
That's awesome. He'd be my first pick too. I'll put a vote in for that. I love it. That sounds like a book that will definitely stick with you after you finish it and keep thinking about it. So thanks, Seema, for sharing that. So we have one last section of books to talk about today. We're going to end with some titles in the realms of poetry and nonfiction. And our first nomination is by Haymarket Books. And Rory Fanning there is going to tell us about a book that's really, it's so new to Edelweiss. It was just added yesterday, and it's coming out next year, called Watch My Smoke, the Eric Dickerson story. And Rory, I know you are in a time crunch. Are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Thanks, everyone. I'm on my way to pick up my kids from school and I kind of can't be late, so I'm calling in. So my name is Rory Fanning. I'm the bookstore and library outreach coordinator here at Haymarket Books. I'm also a Haymarket author. Our mission at Haymarket is publish books that contributes to the struggles for social and economic justice. Since our founding in 2001, Haymarket has published more than 500 titles. Our authors include Noam Chomsky, Miriam Kaba, which reached number 9 on the New York Times bestseller list just last week, Kimberly Crenshaw, Arundhati Roy, Rebecca Solnit, Angela Davis, Howard Zinn, Keegan-Yamada Taylor, Naomi Klein, to name a few. So our lead title is Angela Davis's Autobiography, and I think this will get plenty of attention on its own. So I wanted to present the second title on our list, Watch My Smoke, the Autobiography of Eric Dickerson, which I also think could be a bestseller in its own right. It feels like we spent the last many years preparing ourselves for Watch My Smoke. Starting with John Carlos and working our way up through Michael Bennett and Craig Hodges, I think Haymarket is extremely well positioned to publish the bio of one of the greatest NFL players of all time. Eric Dickerson, with his iconic rec specs and neck brace, is known for his speed and grace and all the records he broke on the field. He was the youngest running back to 10,000 yards. He holds Los Angeles Rams' single season rushing record. He's in all the top 50 greatest NFL player lists, and he's in the Hall of Fame. I think we could say his bio will be a bestseller if other bestsellers by lesser known and less interesting, if I may say, NFL players from the 80s like Steve Young and Roger Craig are any indication. Dickerson tells the story of the racism he dealt with growing up in small town Texas, the controversy that surrounded him taking money from college recruiters, which was a huge scandal at the time. Of course, Dickerson took all the heat for this, and the white-run media companies in Texas and the surrounding areas kind of let the universities that were actually doling out the money to these young people off the hook. You know, as Eric Dickerson says in the book, whatever they paid me, it wasn't enough. He really takes an honest look at the exploitation in college sports, but also pulls back the curtain on the NFL in all its brutality, racism, and kind of drug use. The book is co-written by Greg Hanlon, who works for People magazine. Greg has been published in the prestigious Greatest American Sports Writing book, and he has helped turn Watch My Smoke into a total page turner. Dickerson knows everyone. We have got Shaq, and we've got Snoop Dogg, and we've got Flea, and we've got Dan Marino and Joe Montana all in line for blurbs for this book. It will publish the week of Super Bowl 56, which coincidentally is in Los Angeles. The Rams have agreed to promote the book, and Dickerson, who is an analyst for Fox Sports, will tap all of his connections during the promotion. He's known as the Ram ambassador in Los Angeles and is beloved by everyone there. So anyway, this book is extraordinarily political for a sports book, but unlike other bios that we've published, Dickerson is not persona non grata in the league, so we will be able to use a huge marketing machine that is the NFL and its ecosystem to promote the book. In a way, we'll be able to use this infrastructure against itself, which kind of makes me happy. So anyways, thank you so much, everyone, and apologize for calling in, but my kids are appreciative for the opportunity as well. Thank you.
Right. I totally get that, Rory. No problem at all. Thanks for calling in and sharing that. It sounds really great. I'm not even a sports person, and you sold me. I definitely want to check out that book. All right. So next up, we have a title nominated by Bristol University Press called Radical Empathy, and we have the author Terry Gibbons who's going to tell us about it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here today. And I am a political scientist, and this is my first book that really is for a broad audience. So this has been really exciting for me, and it's been getting a lot of great interest around the country and also around the world. And Radical Empathy is about changing ourselves, our communities, and our world. This is a memoir, so it's my story, but it's also pulls in my research about what's going on in our country around race, as well as allowing people to become activists if they so choose. And I also want to mention that Bristol University Press has created a digital review copy that's available, as well as this book is not only about just reading my story, but it's also about change and action. And I'll talk through the 6 steps of radical empathy, but we have a reading guide that's really people have been very excited about, because the reading guide incorporates all at the end of each chapter, there are steps that you can actually take to not only impact yourself and your community, but also to work more broadly to create change and to tear down structural racism. And so we've combined those in a reading guide, as well as other resources that people can use to understand more about what's going on in their communities and in our country. So this is really my story. It's my family story. You know, we heard earlier from an author that talks about the Great Migration. Well, my mother was part of the Great Migration, and I am really the culmination of what my grandfather, who was a sharecropper, my mother, who worked as a seamstress in Los Angeles, and myself, I'm actually a political scientist with a PhD. When my grandfather, was out there in the fields dreaming of the future, I'm the future that he was hoping for. And, it gives me chills to even say that. So this is, something that's very personal to me, but also I am hoping that this will help create the empathy that will help us change and bridge those divides. So I want to talk quickly through the 6 steps to radical empathy. The first is a willingness to be vulnerable. And I model that in my book. I'm very vulnerable about my family and the impact that not only structural racism, but internalized oppression had on me. And the second step is becoming grounded in who you are. And I emphasize the you because it's really important that we get in touch with ourselves. One of the reasons I wrote this book is that we have not seen change, right? We've gotten to a point, and unfortunately, we're seeing this not only in the African-American community, but Asians are being attacked. And, we really need to look at ourselves and our own individual responsibility for creating change. And the third step is opening yourself to the experiences of others. We to get empathy, and I really try to do that through my stories, is to allow people to practice empathy. We really have to open ourselves to the experiences of others. And then, of course, the fourth step is practicing empathy, because if we don't practice it, it's easy to have empathy relatively, but if you don't practice it, it's a skill. You have to keep doing it. 5 is taking action, because it's one thing to have empathy, meaning putting yourselves in the shoes of somebody else's shoes and trying to understand them. It's a whole other thing to actually take action, to do something about what you've learned. And then the step 6 is creating change and building trust. And I'm not only modeling that by offering examples in the book, but we're also working on I'm currently providing workshops. And so as I do this process, I'm learning through the clients I have, and just the response we've gotten is phenomenal. I mean, people are really getting it because they can empathize with me. They learn how to empathize with others. It was really gratifying recently discussing this with a group. And this is an amazing book for book clubs, not only because of the steps people can take at the end of each chapter, but also because of the reading guide. And that really is a great guide for book clubs and so on. So I really hope you will check this book out. It's really special to me to be able to have this in this forum. And I want to thank my publishers, Bristol University Press and Catherine King, for getting this opportunity for me. And thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Terry. This is definitely one to read. And I don't know if you know this, but Edelweiss, our company Above the Tree Line's headquartered in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I noticed in Edelweiss that you have a review from a U of M professor, Vincent Hudgens. So
Yes,
go Blue.
that's
I just
right.
had to throw that in a little bit.
Yeah, Vince he's actually a friend of, he's probably mentioned in the book because he's a very good friend of mine since graduate school. So go Blue.
I know, go Blue. All right, you gotta work that in. Thanks. I know you have to head out, so thank you so much for sharing with us today. Next up, we have another title nominated by our friends over at Hachette Book Group, and Maddie Caldwell is going to talk to us about Seeing Ghosts.
Hi, thank you, Sarah, and hi, thanks everybody for having me. I am a senior editor at Grand Central Publishing, talking about the memoir Seeing Ghosts, which is a book that I have forthcoming on my list in the summer by a brilliant journalist, Chow, which feels especially important today in this week. It is so difficult to write the absence of someone, difficult even to see the spaces and the memories that person once occupied as they are slowly filled in by time. Seeing Ghosts is the story of the questions Kat Chow's mother's death opened up for her. It's about her immigrant family's ghosts and the many types of debts they'd accrued over generations. It's about understanding what can be gained from loss. Kat Chow is a journalist from NPR and has that all too keen eye for observation, the tiny agonies and unexpected flashes of healing, and the sense of being haunted by a memory. It is in those keenly perceptive moments that Kat connects the infinite possibilities of who we all are. That's why, to me, Seeing Ghosts feels so universal, while also feeling very of the moment. In the last few years, we found ourselves in the midst of a struggle to define what it means to be American, as a citizen, a woman, a daughter. And like many others, I felt the pull towards stories that connect the infinite possibilities of who we are with the universal questions we all share. How do our parents shape us? What do we owe to history? And how do we cope with the guilt and discomfort of breaking from our parents' traditions? That's why this project felt so special. It turns a memoir of grief and one of generational gaps in tradition and culture. It rang true of the American immigrant experience while focusing intimately on one family and their jarring loss. Kat talks about culture, identity, and how Americans of East Asian descent can describe themselves in a world that isn't sure of where they belong. By tracing 3 generations of her family from China to Hong Kong, America, and Cuba, she's able to weave some of the central narratives of American life, like capitalism, immigration, health reform, into her own story. Using deep textual analysis and meticulous research, she investigates the underlying ideas of cultural debt through the prism of her family's grief as she weaves together various definitions of success, creating an almost emotional detective story for the ways in which each member of her family challenges their loss. This memoir confronts far-reaching cultural questions of what we impart to future generations and what we owe to our ancestors, which I think is why bestselling author Ocean Vuong called it a courageous act of excavation and salvage and a feat of rescue and healing. And Alexander Chee said it was a daring, loving, searing debut. It's why it has found itself a spot on many most anticipated lists for 2021, and why we have big plans for this title in-house. I hope that readers, many of whom will have experienced some form of loss this year, will see themselves in Kat and her family. I can't help but see it on the shelf right next to excellent grief memoirs like The Light of the World, Men We Reaped, and H is for Hawk. Seeing Ghosts comes out in August and sits alongside books that meld our most painful emotions with the literary and continues endless human conversations about our own legacy and mortality. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join the many readers falling in love with Kat's story and with her prose.
Thanks, Maddie. I was looking at the comparative titles for this one in Edelweiss, and it looked like just a carefully curated to-read list from like a good friend who was like, you need to read these books. And so I think definitely looking forward to that. So next up, we have a couple titles nominated by our friends over at Source Books, and Brooke Fabian is going to talk to us about I Am the Rage and Footnotes.
Thank you, Sarah. My name is Brooke Roy Fabian. As Sarah said, I am so happy to be working with Source Books as a marketing consultant at the moment. I'm also an independent bookseller. I own my own bookstore. And so it's so nice to see so many of my indie bookseller friends here and saying hello to everyone else who has stayed with us this far. So I Am the Rage is a Black poetry collection written by Dr. Martina McGowan. She is a Black woman. She is a grandmother, a mother. She is a retired chief medical officer and a retired gynecologist. And during 2020, she wrote this collection, which is why it might be a surprise to some of you. It was a drop-in title for us in February. And we really want to make sure that people know about it and are picking it up, certainly for April as National Poetry Month coming up. I am not a Black person. I have not experienced what Dr. Martina McGowan and her Black community have experienced, but her poems still resonated with me so strongly, especially as someone with my own marginalized identities. So I wanted to read one of the poems that I think is particularly appropriate for all of us in considering our own growth during this time. It's called Benediction Number 9. I must let you go, my friend. Although friend is not the right term, my acquaintance is perhaps closer than month. Floating in the outer rim of your influence and sightline, the smallest speck of consideration in how you think and see, letting go of the noose that binds us to what we could have been to each other. Teacher, mentor, the peace we could have brokered, the good we could have done together. For months, or is it years, I have tried to whitewash the frayed baggage of the beliefs you carry and cherish and cling to. Beliefs I thought we could investigate together and learn from each other. But your vile language and contemptible moral superiority can no longer be tolerated. And in case you did not know, tolerate is not a word of friendship. In this moment of crisis, which you should mark as a time of change, you go back to your safe space and you announce that you are done with trying, done with conversation. You would have joined us in the struggle, but, well, the protest did not go the way you wanted. The rage spilled over from cracked cups of peace to looting and burning, as it always does. Your insolence and blindness can no longer be sanctioned by my heart. The underlying all too familiar cadence of this equality dance has grown laboriously burdensome to my spirit. I wish you well in protecting your moral high ground, but I now know I can no longer call you friend, if I ever could. And it's poems like that that just make this such an incredible, powerful collection. It is her first. We expect to see so much more coming from her. And to help all of you booksellers out there, we're doing a post-order campaign. So we have these beautiful letterpress print cards made up of the title poem, I Am the Rage, with a little piece of beautiful artwork included in it as well. And so if you have an interest in being part of that post-publication order campaign, please do reach out and let me know. Our next title is Footnotes by Cassine. He is just a phenomenal author. He has written several books before. This is his first for Sourcebooks, and he does such an incredible deep dive into his topic. And this one is one of the closest to his heart. He is a theater teacher. And so he went to go see this revival of Shuffle Along, the first Black Broadway production that was put on in 1921. And it was revised and revitalized and a little bit rewritten. And in 2015, 2016, it was performed on Broadway. It had a short run in that time. And when he saw it, he was so impacted by the history of Shuffle Along, the original show, that he knew he had to bring this back into people's consciousness. And so in his own words from Footnotes, the book itself, Shuffle Along held a mirror to its audiences, asking them to re-examine the way they saw America and the people of color who inhabit it, who also had stories to tell and deserved space to do so. American history is a tapestry of imperfect icons and flawed works. However, while some are permitted to repeatedly press their feet into the wet cement of time, others are papered over, shuffled off to the sidelines, and relegated to little more than historical footnotes. That is no longer the case. The people who were the most important creatives in writing and performing in Shuffle Along, that original 1921 show, have gotten their moment in Footnotes. And to help with bringing this book out into the world, we have taken musical and comedy act recordings. We are pressing them into a vinyl record. This show never had its own album created at the time, and we are creating that. And I got chills just the other day knowing that I was the first one to hear the commentary tracks from Cassine, the music, and the comedy sketches put together in this way. We have a limited run of these for pre-order campaigns, but we have digital downloads and original album artwork that we're creating to help other people who want to be part of it. Both Cassine and Dr. McGowan are available for events. We have reading and discussion guides for both of these books. We could not be prouder to have Dr. McGowan's book already be out as of February, to have Cassine's book coming out in May. And please do get in touch if you would like digital review copies on Edelweiss or physical copies. We're happy to send them. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Brooke. Those are, I got chills hearing about it too. I gotta check those out. All right. Next up, we have a book nominated by the good folks over at Harper Horizon, and Andrea Fleck Nisbet is going to talk to us about a book coming out this summer, which sounds like a rallying cry just in the title. It's called Agent U, Show Up, Do the Work, and Succeed on Your Own.
Well, first I want to say good morning to everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. It's great to be here with you. I'm Andrea Fleck Nisbet. I'm the publisher at Harper Horizon. We are a Nashville-based imprint of HarperCollins, and we focus on nonfiction books that delight, engage, and inspire readers to make positive change in the world. From a genre perspective, we tend to focus on prescriptive memoir, health and wellness, self-care, parenting, and cookbooks. But today, I'm excited to introduce you to agent, attorney, and social justice advocate Nicole Lynn and tell you about her upcoming book, Agent U. So just about a year ago, I was introduced to Nicole for the first time at a breakfast meeting in New York. And the first thing that struck me about her was how lovely and down to earth she was for a sports agent, which is not typically what you think of when you think of sports agent. But the second thing that struck me was that her easy warmth really belies a fierce intellect and strong will to succeed. And succeed she has. She was recently named one of the most influential women in sports by Sports Illustrated, and is the first Black female agent to represent a top 3 NFL draft pick. Nicole has worked her way from childhood poverty to become a Wall Street financial analyst, then an attorney, and now a top agent to elite athletes and entertainers. And this was all before she turned 30. Now, in addition to her work as an agent and an attorney, she mentors young adults who, like her, are eager to succeed, but often lack the economic and social support systems to prepare them. So Nicole attributes her own success to defining her personal and professional purpose, preparation, self-advocacy, showing up and asking for a seat at the table, and hard work, of course, all of which she now addresses in this book, Agent U. The book's targeted toward young women and men, but primarily really toward women who are eager to find personal and professional success. Nicole steps into the role of mentor and advocate, outlining key strategies for achieving goals, taking calculated risks, and preparing for that moment when opportunity presents itself. Nicole outlines how to create a plan and stick to it, how to develop a personal brand and be your own best advocate, how to surround yourself with people who are invested in your success, and how to manage your workload while prioritizing self-care. So this book is for readers of Marie Forleo's Everything is Figure Outable, and Nicole's insights will speak to the dedicated following that she's already developed, particularly among young professionals who seek her out for advice. She has a large Instagram following, and people will actually reach out to her, and she's very generous with her time. So she often will make time to meet with young people to help them to kind of get on the path for success. So Agent U publishes in July, and Gabrielle Union has written the foreword for it. And I just have to leave you with this story because it sort of illustrates Nicole's tenacity and how she operates. So she said, I don't know Gabrielle Union, but I would really love for her to write the foreword. And so we tried to get to Gabrielle, and her agent tried to get to her. We didn't get any response. And so Nicole said, you know what, I'll just take care of it myself. So she reached out to her through her Instagram account. And within 10 minutes, Gabrielle had responded and said, absolutely, I would love to do it. So that is a perfect example of what this book is about. And we're really excited to get it on shelves in July. Thanks, Sarah.
That's awesome. Definitely one to watch out for. It sounds really motivational. Awesome. So next up, we have a title nominated by the Royal BC Museum called What Was Said to Me. And this book feels really highly relevant to current conversations going on about reconciliation and decolonization. And Eve Rickert is going to share it with us.
Hello, and thank you. And we're in such good company. These books just all sound amazing. I'm Eve. I represent the Royal British Columbia Museum, and we have a book coming out this spring. This is an oral history told by Stita Mott, is her Cowichan name. Her English name is Dr. Ruby Peter. It was given over 7 sessions to Helena Demers, who is a cultural anthropologist at Vancouver Island University. And the book we've created is simply a very, very lightly edited transcription of the oral histories. So it has the cadence and the nonlinearity of, you know, a person sitting there telling you their life story. It's a beautiful story that it's both her personal history and a cultural history with information about cultural traditions and protocols and language. Dr. Peter was a lifelong advocate for Hulkaminam language preservation. So for those who don't know, the Cowichan tribes is a nation on the east coast of Vancouver Island in British Columbia, Canada. Recently, they have been very hard hit by the pandemic. They were in lockdown for several months. And Dr. Peter herself tragically passed away last month, not of COVID, so she left this legacy of her book, which she sadly won't personally be able to see. But Helena, as her collaborator, has brought everything forward. It's filled with images. There are family photos as well as historical photos. And it's just I have never seen anything like this book in terms of the it's a memoir, but it's also a history, but it's also just a story. So.
Oh, wow. I got a little teared up at that, Eve.
Yeah.
Such a legacy to leave behind. So I can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
Well, next up, we have 2 titles from Andrews McNeil Publishing that you're definitely going to want to check out. These ones are really fun. Jamie Cochran is going to talk to us about why she's so excited about Vulnerable AF and Maps for the Modern World.
Hi, and I know some folks may need to jump off soon, so I want to make sure to give you some information on these 2 books. So just to start, when both of these books came through acquisitions and we found out we were going to be doing them, I was so excited. Both of these artists are just amazing, so I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about them. So Vulnerable AF is by Tarana Tank Ball. So Tank is from Tank and the Bangas, a New Orleans-based band. She is also a slam poet. So she and her band were nominated for a Best New Artist Grammy in 2020. She has an energy to her music that she also brings across in her poetry, and that energy is just unmatched. If you haven't watched their NPR Tiny Desk concert, I encourage you to immediately do it right now, and you'll be just as hooked as I am. So Vulnerable AF is the debut poetry collection from Tank, and it's real life story of relationships and the author's past, and it's told in verse and short prose. It's relatable, honest, and it's with her signature mix of whimsy and realness. It's the difference between love and infatuation, danger and confusion, and it's all about getting through heartbreak and really coming out on the other side with humor. So then our next title, Maps for the Modern World. This is another artist. I am so sorry. My daycare person has called like 4 times and my husband just came to the door, so I'm a little nervous about this. Something might be happening, so I'm going to just quickly tell you. So this is also an amazing artist, Valerie June Hockett. She writes about mindfulness, real-world connection. She's been hailed by the New York Times as one of America's most intriguing, fully formed new talents. And she's been writing music for herself and her solo, as well as legends like Mavis Staples. But just like her music, her voice in poetry is unique and distinct, and you can't help but be drawn into her dreamlike world. It's filled with poetry and original art, and it's all about cultivating community, awareness, and being in harmony with our surroundings.
Thank you, Jamie. Go do what you need to do.
Sorry.
Both of these titles are great, and there are other examples of the poetry in Edelweiss and the Edelweiss listing. You can read them. I am not a poetry reader, or I would read one of them to you right now, but they are really great and they will definitely move you. So definitely check those out in Edelweiss. Thanks for sticking with us. That was just a really wonderful collection of books. Many thank yous to the publishers today. I personally really enjoy hearing from them why they're excited about these books in particular and their passion for them. I want to read them all. So these books all allow us to experience a new perspective, or perhaps change our own thinking or enhance our empathy for others' experiences. So thank you again. As we mentioned earlier, we recorded the session today, so we'll be sending it out to anyone who registered. We'll also send you a link to the collection in Edelweiss. We've been putting some links in the chat throughout, but we'll have one with all of them, so you can check that out for easy reference, get those review copies, check out those sample illustrations or poems that are in there. If you asked a question today in chat that we didn't get to in time, we'll definitely reach out afterwards. So thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are.